giờ phải đi đầu lại từ đầu. Tao mất đồ mà.
Chết mất đồ luôn á.
Ừ. Đang nhắn tin nhóm nghe chat mắt cái điện thoại. Kiểu
mèo à.
Đúng không?
Ôi, tức quá. Đi à. Tao sửa mày mấy lần. Ờ, lúc nữa.
Chắc là tao á. Nãy tao chuyển đây mày xịt.
I thought the mushroom and swamp biomes complemented each other nicely, so I combined them to create the ultimate spooky, witch-infested island. To connect our mushroom swamp to the main island, I built a medieval-style gatehouse and bridge before adding some damage to the middle section. There's a reason the Plains villagers have stationed an outpost so close to the border. This peculiar looking island once looked much like the Plains, with fields, trees and quaint little houses, until one day a child from the Plains stumbled across the bridge, and her curiosity took her across. She spotted a beautiful glowing altar in the centre of the village and went to investigate, discovering an assortment of crystals, candles and dried flowers, shrouded in a vibrant green glow. Curious, she picked up one of the crystals and heard a loud shriek from the other side of the mysterious village. She'd accidentally broken an ancient spell, used by a coven of witches to disguise themselves from the outside world. The girl made a run for the bridge, as her surroundings began to transform around her. The terrain became more menacing, the fields were becoming waterlogged, the trees were transforming into giant mushrooms, and the once quaint houses started to look unusual and creepy. As the girl neared the end of the bridge, the witch who had discovered her sent a spell after her in an attempt to protect the coven's secrets. The girl escaped unscathed, but the bridge was badly damaged. Since that day, no one has ventured to the island to see what remains. Some even say there's a mysterious ogre who lives deep within the swamp. And so that wraps up our spooky mushroom swamp transformation. For our desert transformation, I kick things off by rearranging the vanilla village layout to create a clear village centre and main street, taking a little inspiration from Breath of the Wild's Gerudo Town. With the main strip laid out, I repositioned the village buildings neatly either side, prioritising the larger ones and the profession buildings, leaving the remaining buildings and decorations for later. Our first profession building of the village is none other than the Shepherd. This Shepherd is actually a very important character in USW lore, as he once lived in the sandstone ruins which lie just across the dunes. In fact, the villagers who lived here narrowly escaped a grisly fate, and rebuilt their lives in this village after they escaped the evil pharaoh who once ruled these lands. Anyhow, next up I built a house for the stonemason. I tried my best to match these buildings to the surrounding environment, meaning they're predominantly made up of lighter materials that are found in the area, to beat off that scorching desert sun, with colourful draped cloth providing some shade. And with our stonemason complete, I moved on to the village library, for which I took inspiration from mosque architecture. I tweaked this design a little later, as I didn't want to take away from my transformation of the vanilla place. I tweaked this design a little later, for which I took inspiration from mosque architecture. I tweaked this design a little later, as I didn't want to take away from my transformation of the vanilla place of worship, which is coming up. Honestly guys, the best part about building this for survival is that I get to challenge myself with different themes whilst keeping things survival friendly, which includes adding interiors to every single building. Now moving on to the toolsmith. I stuck to the same theme here, but added plenty of furnaces so the local toolsmith can forge and create a variety of tools for their fellow villagers to use. I then whipped up this gatehouse to guard the entrance of the village, before transforming some more large houses to make things feel more bustling and populated. And to finish off the main desert village, I built a grand mosque to house the cleric at the back of the village, fitting pretty nicely with our Egyptian inspirations. Throughout this project, I really wanted to influence our designs and lore with real life cultures and histories. Even though it's all fantasy and not intended to be accurate, Steph and I wanted this project to feel inclusive and unique. For this particular place of worship, I used the Mosque of Muhammad Ali as a reference to create my own design. And seeing as the desert and jungle are historic allies in the ultimate survival world, it was only fitting that the jungle supplied the desert with some new wood to rebuild their village following their escape from the evil pharaoh. So you might spot some jungle wood around the village, which complements the sandstone and terracotta really nicely. Finally, with all of our larger buildings complete, I was left with a bunch of very small, cube-like buildings to transform and scatter throughout the town. These custom houses are still very simple in design, and are pretty much still just square buildings, but I added plenty of small details and colour variation to really make these immersive to explore. Moving on to the decorations, I transformed the pile of scattered hay, adding it to the back of a wagon, and housed the village bell in some sandstone. I then added the wagons throughout the town and placed the bell at the end of the main street.
Phải nhớ với nó là mình cho nó là cây, nó khác chợ mình đổi chợ nó có mình phun mình ra thì nó là cái đứa tự nhiên giờ rồi biết mình biết có cái này biết.
And for a final touch, I upgraded the almighty desert well. Down on the ground, the village looks even busier, with market stalls cluttering the main street, greenery clinging to the village buildings, and apparently all of the villagers want to go for a swim. So, let's move on, shall we? So moving on to one of the most popular vanilla structures in Minecraft, the Desert Temple. And first things first, I basically quadrupled the size of it because I wanted to create a truly epic spectacle in our desert. The entrance of the original Desert Temple looks somewhat like a face, so I thought a massive skull would work perfectly to replicate this on a much more grand scale. Plus it's a great way to ward off attackers. Centuries ago, the evil pharaoh forced his subjects to build this temple for him to store his vast collections of treasures. He fell into an obsession and a dangerous greed for such things, leading to the summoning of a merciless demon from the Nether. I mean, that was never gonna end well, was it? Anyhow, this skull was actually from an old build of mine, so I made tons of adjustments to the sculpt to make sure it fit nicely as an entrance to the temple, finishing up by igniting the skull's eye sockets and creating a staircase leading inside. The other main feature of the Vanilla Temple's design are these two large towers that sit on the front two corners of the pyramid. On these pillars, the pharaoh demanded that the eyes of the sun god and the moon goddess were to be etched, as he believed that this would grant the building and its precious contents protection during both the day and the night. On the second level of the tower, I built a statue loosely based on an ancient Egyptian Medjay. The Medjay were an elite force used to protect valuable areas. so they're a perfect addition to our paranoid Pharaoh's temple. Next, I added crenellations and built a snake symbol on the
quá là mệt, chắc phải nó chạm được rồi. Chạm lại. Bảo kẹt mắt cái nào.
other side, as this was used to symbolize royalty in ancient Egypt. Plus, our evil pharaoh wanted to remind those pesky sandstone villagers who was boss. And to top these menacing towers off, I added a couple of giant fire braziers before completing the exterior by splitting the main body of the pyramid into 3 sections and creating walkways on each level. I added further fire braziers to decorate and a protruding section on the pyramid side to create some side entrances and a protruding section on the pyramid side to create some side entrances and make the shape a little more interesting. I then repositioned our desert temple in the terrain, blending the sand dunes to sit flush with the build. And of course, we can't forget the interior. I wanted to go for a very clean interior to match that of the vanilla pyramid, and to leave plenty of space for the pharaoh's collection of treasures. Although, they're actually no longer hidden in here, so I think you might have to search for them elsewhere. Our menacing pyramid is complete, and beneath lies the pharaoh's tomb, filled with the remaining treasure and secrets. Just be sure you don't miss a step, as it's rigged with booby traps. And to add that Trixie Blocks twist to this desert, I wanted to include a few custom builds, starting with the sandstone ruins. The desert people who once lived here grew tired of the evil pharaoh's cruelty, so they sought the help of the jungle to overthrow him. The pharaoh grew wise to this plot, and in his anger, he summoned the Wither to wreak havoc on the people. But the Wither turned on the pharaoh, after destroying the ancient village and leaving it in ruins, as you can see. Many of the people fled to other regions before returning to their homeland years later to start again, gradually establishing themselves in the nearby village. These ruins are a reminder of the destruction caused by the last known person to summon a Wither. Perhaps until one day an epic Minecrafter like you will take on the challenge. These ruins are great fun to explore, and you may just find some old hidden treasure and story within. Another feature I wanted to add to spice up the desert was an oasis or two, so I dug out an area and built several palm trees at varying heights. I pasted them in clusters and decorated with plenty of greenery. I included a bunch of tropical fish and even a few turtle eggs as well. Stumbling across these on your adventures could be a real lifesaver, but you better just hope that it's not all just a mirage. Moving away from the desert and towards the beaches, it's time to transform Minecraft's shipwreck. Now, this particular shipwreck was struck by a devastating spell by the nearby witch coven on the mysterious Mushroom Swamp Island. Pirates from a distant land had got their hands on the first clue to the treasure hunt leading to the lost treasure of the evil pharaoh and made their way to the island. They ventured too close to the witch's domain, leaving their ship wrecked on the USW beaches, and the pirates themselves seemingly lost to the sea. So with our lovely, unbroken ship built, it's time for a little destruction. These kind of tweaks take a ton of manual work, but the results are always worth it. After fixing things up, I built some tattered sails hanging limply from the masts after being left to rot. Perhaps on the inside there are some clues about what really happened, or even the first riddle to a huge treasure hunt involving dangerous quests that span across the entire map. And I guess you'll have to find those out for yourselves. And since I'd already placed another vanilla shipwreck on the beach next to the jungle, I decided to change things up and make this into an actual of the jungle. I made some changes to the colour scheme of the hull and added the shrouds, which is the rigging that stabilises the masts. And then I worked on the sails, which took a little bit of time as I made them organic, as though the wind is blowing into them at a slight angle. I added in a foresail at the front before finishing the rest. Since I was going for that Black Pearl vibe, I thought it would only be appropriate if the sails followed suit. I suppose she looks a little less tatty and weather-beaten, but I guess this was around the time when Captain Jack first obtained the ship, so she's not too battered and bruised yet.
Why is the run gone?
Here you can see her in all of her glory approaching the jungle's beach. Perhaps there's something hidden there. Captain Jack wouldn't be making this journey for nothing. You'll also find a rowboat at shore. Let's hope those pirates don't nab whatever they're looking for before you guys get the chance. And our desert transformation is complete. So, first things first in our dark forest, I removed the original darkwood trees to make way for our brand new woodland. And as you can see, I really wanted to upgrade the scale of these trees dramatically to create a spooky, fantasy forest like something from a fairy tale. And because I'm building a survival friendly world, I had to ensure that the trees had enough branches to stop the leaves from decaying once placed. I ended up building 4 different trees, making sure they had enough variation in height and shape to avoid a repetitive looking forest. I thought it would make sense to create a few little man-made bridges to connect the plains biome to the Darkwood at different ends of the biome. Perhaps this was built by the villagers to aid in travelling across to trade in each other's biomes. Okay, now it's time for some major changes. I really wanted to add a bit of variation to the landscape, especially around the main village, as the biome previously felt way too flat. So I quite literally repositioned and pasted an entire mountainscape here. Then, I cut through the entire biome to create a river flowing through and connecting to the large lake in the centre of the island. With that done, I started layering the landscape up the side of this hill to create a tiered effect, as this would be the foundations for our new village. As you can see, I dug out a few routes for some rivers and waterfalls, stemming from a large lake of water that sits behind the village, encased in some mysterious mountain peaks. With a lot of the main terraforming complete, I started to fill out the forest with those trees that I made. Before placing the rest of the trees, I wanted to include a small lake with a monument in the centre. Legend says that one of the most powerful swords in the land was placed there by a mysterious wizard, who claimed that only a worthy adventurer would be able to retrieve it. Do you reckon you'll be up to the challenge? Now we've got to fill out the remaining half of the biome to finish our dense darkwood forest. Honestly, when you guys play this, you will never run out of a wood supply. You could build an entire kingdom from chopping down even just one of these trees. And if you can't face chopping down all of my creations, you could always make yourself a tree farm from the saplings. Anyway, before moving on, we've got to fill this forest with some shrubbery and rock clusters. Placing these custom bushes and rocks around really fills out the forest floor, making it much more dense and like an overgrown woodland. These decorations literally cover the entire biome, so you won't want to stray too far from the pathway, otherwise you might get lost. And this is our magical forest, ready for some epic builds. If you look around closely, you'll even find fireflies in this biome when you're exploring in Java. Now, since the main pathway weaves throughout the forest, I whipped up a bunch of bridges to cross the cliff sides and allow access between each section of the biome. So starting with the first of our profession-based buildings for the Darkwood Village, the Cleric, or I suppose in this case, the Rabbi. Now, as mentioned in earlier chapters, I'm changing things up for the village church and using different inspirations for the places of worship across the biomes. So far, I've been inspired by a church in the plains biome, a mosque in the desert, and for the Darkwood, I decided to refer to synagogue architecture. The synagogue is a Jewish place of worship, but can also double as a place to study and a community centre as well, so it's a perfect centrepiece for our forest village. Now, after researching into the architecture of a typical synagogue, I discovered that they're not limited to a particular style or shape. They vary in design quite a lot. However, the most notable features I found from reference images of real-life synagogues were large, circular windows sandwiched between two towers with bulb-like roofs. So I used this as a reference point and added my own twists. Which alternative place of worship would you most like to see in Minecraft? As for the interior of the synagogue, I discovered that the style and layout seemed to vary quite a bit. The only thing that did seem to persist were archways overlooking balconies either side, rows of pews, and a raised platform. You can access the second floor via the front towers, and with the design laid out, I mirrored it to the other side of the building. I realised how massive I ended up making this building once I attempted placing it down. I guess I was kinda compensating for the fact that the Dark Forest doesn't spawn its own villages in default Minecraft. Our second profession-based building is for the village cartographer. I settled on a peaked roof, fantasy style for this building, which will loosely persist throughout the remainder of this village. Obviously, because the cartographer lives here, I had to include a separate lookout tower that connects to the side of the building.
Ngồi sau
Alright. Lắc không?
hả?
Lắc không?
Rồi đó.
Ui,
Mày chạy bên mày không quen với tao mà lát.
có chứ.
Con kia.
Ok.
Ra. trái dừa mà mày dừa đây rồi.
Đây đâu?
Ý là nó mày có lại trái dừa này đây nha.
Gì sao?
Cứ như cái nhà của mày nữa mà lắm á. Kiểu muốn là kiểu làm việc cái vật thảm họa. Ờ, tao về tí nữa tao gỡ hai cái món
Tao nè, tao mới đi qua cổng là mày lát luôn á.
có lúc mày qua cổng đâu á.
Tao biết.
Ơi má yếu rồi. Ơi. Không đi về hả? Đi lại anh đi ngủ đi mày ơi. Bây giờ mấy con mấy con quỷ skeleton của nhà anh rồng.
Đây được cho kìa.
Xong cái tao đánh nó cái nó rớt cái cước hai con nó tách ra nó không tự.
Ủa kìa.
Một con là kéo biết bơi, con là biết bơi. Hai con nó tách ra nó đi hai hướng.
Bán chim bán nón.
Kiểu áp từ trên trời xuống mà nhấn tiếp thì sẽ bị nhấn tiếp vô cái lăn tóc này. Không có vết thương mà cũng không bị sưng lên.
Gì nữa? Cái đâu?
Đi cái này đi trên tóc này. Dính rồi chưa? Sao đó cái giờ 5 giờ rưỡi nó qua tới. Nó có mặt 5 rưỡi ở đâu nó kêu nó có mặt bên là nó sẽ có mặt chiên 5 rưỡi ở đây tôi biết ở đây mình 5 giờ mình chỉ là cái cổ là 5 giờ gặp này nha cũng chỉ một ghé nhà đó nó là để một tí cũng được cái giờ của nó thế giờ nó mặc định nó biết là nó phải có mặt qua nè ở đó là 5 rưỡi không đi bộ phải 5 giờ mình đi, 5 giờ đây mình đi.
5:15 cũng được thì bây
Không,
giờ
đây bỏ cho 15 phút không?
tính chừng sai. Không có phải tính chừng sai của nó vậy bộ.
Đâu đây không phải mà.
Ông tính chừng sai cho nó nè, đúng không? Giống như bây giờ chắc chắn nó có tới lúc 5 rưỡi. Thì thật ra chúng ta là thấy có, nhưng mà buồn như cả là
Kiểu biết cái tay giờ tay nó đâu có tay đâu. Tay nó giờ 2 cái đâu.
cái này bự lắm luôn. Giờ tao xài tay lạnh không xài kiếm nữa.
Biết là làm buồn cô.
Vậy
Cái
ủa
kiếm nó biết.
tao đang chứng kiến một cái tụi nó mới giết con heo xong cái tao nó nhảy kìa.